Throughout history, we've known many great leaders who, over time, turned into ruthless dictators. But has the opposite ever happened? Has history ever seen a dictator who later became a harbinger of freedom for their country? If so, such leaders are undoubtedly rare. One of these rare leaders was Wojciech Jaruzelski, the dictator of Poland. Born in 1923 into an aristocratic family, his early life was marked by upheaval. At the age of 16, Poland was invaded by Nazi forces. Shortly after, with the Soviet Union's help, part of Poland was reclaimed, dividing the country into two areas, one under Nazi rule and the other under Soviet control. However, the situation for Jaruzelski's family worsened, and they decided to flee to Lithuania. Within months, Lithuania also fell under Soviet rule. Being an aristocratic family, and therefore natural enemies of the communists, the Jaruzelskis were quickly identified. The Red Army arrested the entire family, confiscating their property and exiling them to Siberia and other remote regions. At 18, Wojciech's life changed drastically. The Soviets seized all their possessions, and his father was sent to the Gulag, a Soviet forced labor camp where he died within a year. Wojciech and his mother were exiled to southern Soviet territory. In his new location, Jaruzelski was assigned the grueling task of clearing forests 180 kilometers from home. He walked this distance daily, enduring harsh conditions. Prolonged exposure to the region's heavy snowfall caused permanent eye damage, forcing him to wear prescription sunglasses for the rest of his life. He grew older. Jaruzelski attended military school and later served in the Polish army under Soviet supervision. At 22, he fought in two critical battles, Warsaw and Berlin. These victories contributed to the end of World War II, the Soviet Union's triumph, and Nazi Germany's defeat. After the war, Jaruzelski rose rapidly through the ranks, reaching the rank of lieutenant in Poland's Communist Army. His involvement in the fight against Poland's anti-communist army earned him favor with Soviet leaders. Following the war, he graduated from a military academy and, under the pseudonym Wolski, worked as a direct Soviet spy within the Polish army. His loyalty to the communist regime brought rapid promotions. Jaruzelski became a member of Poland's Central Committee of the Communist Party, a key figure in both the political and military spheres. At 45, he was appointed Poland's Minister of Defense. That same year, acting on Soviet orders, he commanded the invasion of Czechoslovakia. By age 58, he became Prime Minister of Poland, the only military officer to reach such a high political position in Soviet-dominated Eastern Europe. On the surface, everything seemed to be going well for Jaruzelski and the Communist Party. However, the Polish people were deeply dissatisfied and increasingly opposed to communist rule. This growing discontent led to the emergence of the Solidarity movement, a grassroots effort that began operating covertly but grew more organized over time. The movement eventually elected leaders and spokespeople, becoming a serious threat to the communist regime. Jaruzelski viewed this as a direct threat to both the communist system and his own power. Just 2 weeks after assuming office, he decided to meet with opposition leaders, including representatives from Solidarity and the Catholic Church. Pretending to seek collaboration, he engaged with them to identify key figures within the opposition. Shortly afterward, using the pretext of a planned coup by Solidarity, Jaruzelski declared martial law. Over 1,000 leaders and members of the movement were arrested. Later, he admitted in interviews that the sole purpose of martial law was to crush the Solidarity movement. Martial law lasted for 2 years. In its early days, widespread arrests and violence against protesters turned Jaruzelski into one of the most hated figures in Poland. As a dictator, he censored books and news outlets, imprisoning writers, journalists, and political activists without substantial evidence. Martial law led to severe economic problems. People struggled to access basic necessities like food and essential supplies. Over the course of 9 years, between 100,000 to 300,000 Polish citizens emigrated from the country. Realizing that the situation could not continue like this, Jaruzelski eased restrictions in 1983, ending martial law. He released many prisoners and managed to regain the trust of some members of the Solidarity movement. However, Jaruzelski himself admitted that the people no longer liked him. In an interview with a Russian journalist, he stated, "For the people of Poland to love me, it would take a miracle." A miracle that, in a way, later occurred. Meanwhile, within Poland, hardline communist factions opposed Jaruzelski's conciliatory measures. In late 1983, some radical members of the secret police murdered a priest associated with the Solidarity movement. To show his disapproval, Jaruzelski ordered the perpetrators to be arrested and tried in a public court, where they were sentenced to imprisonment. This was the first time in a communist country that secret police members were publicly prosecuted. Despite these actions, Jaruzelski's thirst for power remained. In 1985, he expanded his authority, becoming not only Prime Minister but also Minister of Defense and the leader of Poland. He effectively ruled the entire country without opposition. In 1989, Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union, initiated a series of reforms. He invited the leaders of Warsaw Pact countries to the Soviet Union for discussions. During these sessions, Jaruzelski faced heavy criticism for his authoritarian and overly centralized style of governance. He was pressured to reform Poland's political system. Upon returning to Poland, Jaruzelski initiated significant changes. He held nationwide elections for parliamentary representatives. Surprisingly, with his support, the Solidarity movement was legalized and became a legitimate political party. This allowed the movement to field its own candidates in parliamentary elections. This marked the first time in a communist country that an independent party gained representation in the parliament. In the elections, the Solidarity movement won by a landslide. The Communist Party suffered such a crushing defeat that members of the Solidarity movement feared Jaruzelski might tamper with the results. But Jaruzelski did not interfere. Instead, he supported the process and ensured that all elected representatives were allowed to take their seats in parliament. Under the new system of governance, Poland needed a president. With no other candidates for the position, Jaruzelski became the first president of the new Poland, receiving votes from Solidarity representatives in parliament. Jaruzelski was now the president of a people who clearly supported change and favored the Solidarity movement, with no interest in the communists. He even asked Lech Wałęsa, the leader of the Solidarity movement, to form a coalition with the Communist Party. Wałęsa declined, arguing that their ideals were fundamentally incompatible. Confronted with reality, Jaruzelski resigned as president just 1 year later. In his final speech, he formally apologized to the people for the years of martial law. He admitted, "The memory of those years is like a nightmare for me. It is a heavy burden I will carry for the rest of my life." In the subsequent elections, Lech Wałęsa was elected president with overwhelming parliamentary support. Wałęsa, who had played a pivotal role in the Solidarity movement, later received the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts. Despite their differences, Wałęsa always spoke positively about Jaruzelski's eventual support for Poland's transformation. In later interviews, Jaruzelski stated, "I believe communism is dead. Today, I support social democracy." In 2006, at the age of 82, Jaruzelski was awarded Poland's Medal of Honor by the then president. He managed to transform his legacy from one of the most despised figures in Polish history to one of the most respected. Despite everything, Jaruzelski faced legal repercussions in 2006. He was summoned to court for some of the darker events of his rule. However, due to his illness, these trials were never held. Ultimately, in 2014, Jaruzelski passed away in a Warsaw hospital and was laid to rest in Poland's military cemetery.